Guys, I've never seen something like this before. This truck behind me is way bigger than I am. I never saw something like that. Because I'm just a European girl, you just look at it. Oh my god.
Get state of these trucks here, cyber trucks. You don't get these in England.
Look at these.
State of them. It's like a Cybertruck graveyard, isn't it? All seats are like Dexter. It's like living in a dystopian future, isn't it?
It's so weird.
You know how I'm trying to soak in America after moving from the UK by getting experiences in culture, food and places? Josh's efforts are hiring a truck. He's conceded that we shouldn't use the pickup part of the pickup truck in case it rains or shuffles around. This is our suitcase I'm talking about. So he's putting it on the back seat, which you could do in a car. I need a leg up to get in here. I'm only 5'2".
This big boy.
Here he comes. Oh dear. I hope you got
a truck.
I hope you got extra scratch protection because this is wider and longer than anything you've ever driven before. But here we go. If you see another video from us, you'll know we made it successfully to our destination in the Outbags. See you soon.
What if the car you were told was practical turned out to be smaller, tighter, and nearly as expensive as an American SUV? During the 2026 World Cup, many British visitors faced that comparison in real parking lots, and the numbers were hard to unsee. Had America really been excessive all along, or had Europe simply grown used to paying more for less? One look across the hood was enough to make the old story fall apart. America comes full size. The first thing many Britons discover in America is that their idea of a normal car has been placed in the dryer. Back home, a Vauxhall Corsa, a mini hatchback, or a Ford Fiesta-sized car can feel perfectly ordinary. It slips through London's side streets, squeezes past parked vans in Bristol, and has a chance of surviving a multi-story car park in Manchester without donating paint to a concrete pillar. Then the 2026 World Cup brings visitors into American parking lots, and the scale changes before the engine even starts. A family SUV looks wide enough to host a tailgate meeting, while a full-size pickup seems to arrive in 3 separate time zones. Even the hood can sit high enough to make a British compact look less like a rival vehicle and more like hand luggage with headlights. The surprise becomes sharper when price enters the conversation. British buyers are used to paying heavily for small cars because the sticker reflects more than metal and seats. Value-added tax, emissions policy, fuel prices, import costs, and a market built around tighter roads all push the industry toward smaller, lighter vehicles. That makes sense in Britain, where a car must negotiate streets laid out long before anyone imagined cup holders, lane assist cameras, or a Costco run. In America, however, the same calculation follows a different equation. The country has large-scale production, a vast domestic market, wider roads, longer journeys, and consumers who often expect one vehicle to handle school runs, road trips, home improvement supplies, sports gear, and a weekend escape without asking passengers to hold luggage on their knees. In that setting, size is part of the vehicle's basic promise, rather than an expensive decorative extra. That is why a British visitor can remember the cost of a compact car, then stare at a larger American SUV with the expression of someone who has just learned the second floor was included free. The comparison is imperfect because trims, taxes, exchange rates, and equipment vary between markets. Yet the contrast remains difficult to miss. Americans often receive more cabin, more cargo room, more power, and more road trip comfort for money that can feel surprisingly familiar to a British buyer. This is the moment when the familiar media picture begins to lose its grip. Europe often hears about American excess as though every extra inch were a moral failing, but standing beside the vehicle tells a more practical story. The space means grandparents can ride comfortably, children can stretch out, luggage can disappear into the trunk, and a long highway journey can feel less like endurance and more like freedom. After some time in America, the big car no longer looks ridiculous, it begins to feel generous and difficult to give up. Many visitors begin wondering whether the real American luxury is chrome or horsepower, or simply the privilege of having room to breathe. Returning to a tiny British hatchback may then feel like leaving a living room and climbing directly into the coat closet. America's giant advantage. A British badge can sell heritage, leather, and the faint promise that someone in a flat cap personally inspected the stitching. America sells something far more difficult to imitate. Industrial scale so enormous that a full-size truck can become perfectly ordinary family transportation. That difference becomes obvious when World Cup visitors compare the personalities of the brands rather than staring only at individual price tags. British-born names such as Jaguar, Land Rover, Mini, Bentley, and Lotus often compete through style, craftsmanship, performance, or prestige. Their cars can feel like tailored jackets designed to say something specific before the engine even starts. Ford, Chevrolet, and Ram approach the market from another direction, building vehicles expected to tow, haul, commute, survive winter, carry children, and still look respectable outside a steakhouse on Saturday night. The numbers explain why this American formula carries such confidence. Data from the International Organization of Motor Vehicle Manufacturers shows that the United States produced roughly 6 million motor vehicles in 2023, while the United Kingdom built just over 1 million. That difference is not a narrow lead, it is an industrial canyon wide enough to park several assembly plants inside. Higher production allows manufacturers to spread development costs across more vehicles, support enormous dealership networks, and offer configurations for nearly every kind of customer. That scale also keeps replacement parts, service knowledge, and aftermarket equipment close at hand. In America, buying a truck can feel less like entering an exclusive club and more like choosing a familiar tool from a very well-stocked Home Depot aisle. Sales figures tell the same story in language everyone understands. Ford sold more than 750,000 F-Series trucks in the United States during 2023. In Britain that same year, the country's best-selling model, the Ford Puma, recorded fewer than 50,000 registrations according to industry figures. Neither vehicle is automatically better everywhere, because a Puma makes excellent sense and leads traffic, while an F-150 feels entirely at home on a Texas ranch. The remarkable part is that America can transform a machine with the presence of a small cabin into a mainstream product. This is where the familiar European joke about American excess begins to feel incomplete. A full-size pickup is not treated as a rare luxury reserved for celebrities or country estates. It may belong to a contractor, a parent, a farmer, a small business owner, or someone whose weekend happens to involve a fishing boat and several coolers. The truck fits into everyday life so naturally that Americans rarely stop to explain its existence. That ordinary familiarity can become surprisingly addictive for visiting drivers. Once someone grows comfortable with a commanding seating position, effortless highway power, enormous storage, and a cabin that does not punish passengers for having knees. Returning to a smaller car may feel like moving from a diner booth into an economy airline seat. Britain creates beautiful machines with unmistakable personality, while America has mastered the art of giving regular people an extraordinary amount of vehicle. During the 2026 World Cup, that discovery can overturn years of gloomy headlines in a single drive. The America described from overseas may sound excessive and impractical, but the America experienced behind the wheel feels capable, generous, and wonderfully prepared for whatever comes next. Freedom at the pump. A British visitor can forgive the size of an American SUV until the fuel pump starts counting. That is where the plot twist arrives, because the numbers climb far more slowly than expected. A tank large enough to supply a long cruise still does not produce the kind of receipt many drivers in Britain have learned to fear. According to the US Energy Information Administration, regular gasoline averaged about $3, 52 per gallon nationwide in 2023. In Britain, government pump price data placed average unleaded petrol around $1.45 to $1.50 per liter, equal to roughly $7 for a US gallon, depending on the exchange rate. The gap is so large that an American road trip can feel as though someone removed the admission fee from the highway. Tax policy explains much of that contrast. Britain's fuel duty stood at 95 pence per liter, with 20% value-added tax added afterward. In the United States, the federal gasoline tax remained 18.4 cents per gallon, although state taxes raised the final price. One system asks fuel to support wider public priorities, the other leaves drivers more room to roam. That choice shapes each car market. In London, Birmingham, or Edinburgh, fuel economy is discussed with the seriousness Americans reserve for mortgage rates because every extra mile per gallon protects the household budget. A compact hatchback becomes a sensible teammate when the petrol station seems to keep a calculator behind the counter. Across much of America, the pump has traditionally taken a smaller share of the driver's attention. Families can choose a larger engine, carry more people, tow a trailer, or drive several hundred miles for a weekend without feeling that every highway exit is billing them by the minute. American powertrains therefore feel relaxed about their strength. The engine can stretch its legs instead of behaving as though it received a warning from accounting. That freedom becomes especially noticeable during the 2026 World Cup, when visitors travel through American regions and discover that distance works differently here. A drive that sounds unreasonable in Britain can become part of the entertainment, complete with roadside diners, enormous service stations, cold drinks, and enough trunk space for purchases nobody planned to make. Somewhere between the second coffee and the next state line, the vehicle stops feeling like transportation and begins acting like a private base camp. This is the addictive part of American car culture. Relatives several hours away can still be considered close, and a Saturday plan can expand by 2 counties without requiring a family budget meeting. From a television studio overseas, that mobility is easy to label excessive. From the passenger seat, with the interstate rolling toward the horizon, it feels wonderfully generous. Britain's efficient cars suit British life beautifully, while its fuel taxes reflect deliberate policy choices. America offers a different pleasure, the sense that distance remains available. After living with that freedom, returning to a tiny fuel gauge and a serious petrol receipt may become the greatest surprise of the journey. America keeps rolling in Britain. 200,000 miles can sound like a polite warning from the mechanic. In America, the same number can sound like a respectable resume. That difference says something about the way Americans live with their cars. A vehicle is rarely treated as a fashion purchase once the warranty fades. It becomes the pickup that helped move 3 apartments, the SUV that carried children to school, or the sedan that crossed state lines to deserve its own refrigerator magnet collection. The odometer does not automatically announce retirement. Sometimes it simply proves the machine has finally earned a nickname. S&P Global Mobility reported that the average vehicle on American roads reached 12. 6 years old in 2024, the highest figure on record. Britain's car fleet was younger, with the industry figures placing the average age at roughly 9 years. The gap may look small on paper, yet it represents millions of birthdays, oil changes, replacement belts, and owners deciding that a trusted vehicle still has another chapter left. America makes that choice easier because its repair ecosystem is enormous. Popular trucks and SUVs sell in such huge numbers that parts remain available, independent mechanics know them well, and online communities can explain a strange dashboard noise before breakfast. An older Ford F-150 in Ohio or Chevrolet Tahoe in Texas is not an archaeological discovery. It is simply another everyday sight in ordinary Tuesday traffic. Britain follows a different logic shaped by dense cities and strict urban policy. Cars undergo annual MOT testing after their 3rd year, while London's ultra-low emission zone charges many non-compliant vehicles $12.50 per day. Those rules serve real goals, safer roads and cleaner air, but they can make an older car feel financially tired before its engine is mechanically finished. In much of America, especially beyond the largest coastal cities, an aging vehicle can keep working as long as the owner is willing to maintain it. That creates one of the warmest parts of American car culture: loyalty. People remember the first road trip, the dent from a hardware store cart, and the exact winter when the heater stopped cooperating. The vehicle becomes less like a disposable appliance and more like a stubborn family dog that still knows the route home. For visitors raised around smaller cars, tighter inspection rules, and expensive urban driving, this long relationship can be unexpectedly charming. America's abundance is not always about buying the newest object. Sometimes it appears in the freedom to keep a useful one, repair it, personalize it, and drive it until the mileage begins to look like a baseball statistic. That may be why American vehicles become so difficult to forget. Their size makes the first impression, but their staying power earns the affection. When a 20-year-old pickup starts on the first turn and heads toward another weekend job, the country's confidence feels less like advertising and more like proof. It does not ask to be admired from behind a velvet rope, it simply asks where everyone wants to go next. 2 pedals. When the most persuasive piece of American car culture may not be the giant engine, the towering hood, or the trunk that could swallow a British kitchen. It may simply be the missing 3rd pedal. In Britain, learning to drive has traditionally meant becoming closely acquainted with the clutch. New drivers practice hill starts, search for the biting point, and occasionally stall at a green light while the car behind offers immediate emotional support through its horn. The manual gearbox became part of British driving identity because smaller engines, fuel economy, and generations of familiar habit kept it relevant for decades. America made a different decision much earlier. According to industry estimates from J.D. Power, manual transmissions accounted for less than 2% of new vehicles sold in the United States during 2023. In Britain, automatic cars had also become dominant by then, representing roughly 7 out of every 10 new registrations, according to figures reported by the Society of Motor Manufacturers and Traders. However, the cultural shift happened in America long before British drivers began embracing it at the same scale. That earlier adoption reveals what Americans expect from driving. A car should reduce effort rather than turn every commute into a practical examination. On a crowded freeway outside Los Angeles, through the sprawling interchanges of Dallas, or during stop-and-go traffic around Atlanta, nobody receives a medal for pressing a clutch pedal 600 times before dinner. The automatic transmission quietly handles the repetitive work, while the driver focuses on traffic, navigation, and finding the correct exit before the highway sends everyone toward another county. For visitors arriving during the 2026 World Cup, this simplicity can become addictive surprisingly quickly. They climb into a large American vehicle, select drive, and discover that several thousand pounds of machinery can move with less ceremony than a shopping cart. There's no anxious balancing act on a slope, no hurried gear change at an awkward junction, and no moment when the engine suddenly goes silent because the left foot lost an argument. That ease changes the emotional tone of the entire journey. Driving begins to feel less like operating equipment and more like settling into a comfortable space that happens to travel. Long distances become calmer, city traffic becomes less tiring, and the driver arrives with enough patience left to speak kindly to other human beings. On the M25 around London, that remaining patience would qualify as a luxury option. European media often presents American cars as oversized symbols of unnecessary consumption, yet daily experience exposes a more thoughtful priority beneath the sheet metal. American design frequently asks how technology can remove friction from ordinary life. Power steering, cruise control, automatic gearboxes, remote start, large reversing cameras, and carefully placed controls all serve the same practical idea. The machine should work around the person rather than demanding constant proof of skill. Manual driving can still be engaging, rewarding, and wonderfully suited to a winding road in Wales or the Scottish Highlands. America simply recognized that most Tuesday mornings are neither a rally stage nor an audition for Formula One. People are carrying children, answering navigation prompts, watching surrounding traffic, and trying to reach work without turning the clutch into a second job. After several weeks with an American automatic, returning to a manual car can feel strangely ceremonial. The driver presses the clutch, selects first gear, releases it carefully, and suddenly remembers how much concentration used to be spent on something the American vehicle handled without mentioning it. That quiet convenience may not appear dramatic in overseas headlines, but once experienced, it becomes one of those American comforts people miss almost immediately. America's rolling toolbox. Watch an American pickup for long enough, and it begins changing jobs in front of you. At 7 in the morning, it is carrying lumber. By noon, it is parked outside an office. That evening, child seats appear in the back, groceries disappear beneath the tonneau cover, and somebody hooks up a boat as though the vehicle has been waiting all day for its real assignment. This ability to switch roles explains why American trucks feel less like oversized toys and more like national multi-tools. Light trucks, a category that includes pickups, SUVs, and vans, accounted for roughly 4 out of every 5 new vehicles sold in the United States in recent years. Pickups alone occupy an extraordinary place in the market. Ford's F-Series has repeatedly sold more than 700,000 units in a single year, meaning one truck family can outsell the entire annual new car market of some smaller European countries. That is not a passing fashion. It is a piece of infrastructure with headlights. Britain has its own hardworking vehicles, but the job is usually divided differently. A builder in Birmingham or a plumber in Glasgow is more likely to rely on a Ford Transit, Vauxhall Vivaro, or another enclosed van. That choice suits narrow streets, rainy weather, valuable tools, and city parking where every exposed inch of cargo can attract the wrong kind of attention. The vehicle goes to work wearing sensible shoes and a waterproof jacket. America lets the pickup do everything in one pair of boots. A contractor in Phoenix can carry materials during the week, while the same truck handles school pickup, a Costco run, and a weekend in the desert. In Montana, Wyoming, or rural Texas, towing capacity is not a brochure number added for decoration. It may decide whether a horse trailer, fishing boat, work equipment, or camper moves at all. The truck earns its space because American life often asks one vehicle to solve several unrelated problems before dinner. That practicality changes how size is perceived. From overseas, a long hood and an open bed can look theatrical, almost as though the truck is arriving with its own country music entrance. Up close, every extra foot starts explaining itself. The bed carries dirty equipment without ruining the cabin. The rear seats protect passengers from tools and weather. The towing hardware turns leisure into something families can bring from home rather than rent at the destination. There's also an emotional reason these vehicles become hard to give up. A pickup creates the pleasant feeling that nearly every spontaneous plan remains possible. Someone finds an antique table, volunteers to help a friend move, buys a grill that looked smaller inside the store, or decides Friday afternoon that the family should go camping. The truck rarely objects. It simply lowers the tailgate and waits for the next questionable decision. European media can reduce American pickups to symbols of excess because the vehicles photograph dramatically and consume more fuel than a compact hatchback. Yet that framing misses the daily usefulness hiding behind the chrome. In Britain, separate tools often solve separate tasks. A van for work, a small car for town, perhaps a rental for the larger trip. The American pickup compresses those needs into one machine and adds a cup holder large enough for iced tea. That combination of work, family life, and open-ended freedom is what visitors begin to understand after spending time around these trucks. The attraction is not merely sitting higher than everyone else at a traffic light. It is knowing that when life suddenly produces a couch, a canoe, 3 bicycles, or a home improvement project nobody properly measured, the vehicle outside is already smiling. Built your way. The giveaway is not the badge on the grill. It is the accessory aisle behind the showroom. In America, buying the car can feel like ordering a sandwich because the real personality arrives afterward through wheels, bed covers, tow packages, steps, racks, lighting, floor liners, suspension kits, and enough storage hardware to make a garage blush. That freedom explains why American vehicles become so easy to love. They are rarely treated as finished objects handed down by a designer wearing a stern expression. Instead, they become platforms waiting for the owner to decide whether life requires camping gear, work tools, 3 bicycles, a base boat, or simply a cup holder capable of respecting a 20-ounce drink. The scale supporting that habit reaches beyond ordinary weekend hobbyists. The Specialty Equipment Market Association estimated that Americans spent more than $50 billion on automotive specialty equipment in 2023. Much of that money went toward pickups, SUVs, Jeeps, family cars, and daily drivers whose owners wanted better utility, stronger performance, or a look that felt more personal. In Los Angeles, customization may lean toward wheels and appearance, while around Detroit, performance carries the weight of local history. Across Texas, a truck can collect towing equipment and bed accessories the way a kitchen collects cast iron pans. Britain has a strong enthusiast culture too, from classic Minis to carefully restored Land Rovers, but everyday modification lives inside a tighter rulebook. Changes usually need to be declared to insurers, and anything affecting lights, emissions, tires, or structure must remain compatible with MOT requirements. In London, where parking is scarce and the ultra-low emission zone shapes ownership decisions, adding size or weight can create more headaches than happiness. American roads, driveways, and garages often leave owners more room for experimentation, both physically and culturally. Personalization matters because it turns a useful vehicle into a small declaration of independence. One family adds a roof box for national park trips, while a contractor installs lockable drawers. A college football fan chooses a tailgate setup capable of feeding half the parking lot before kickoff. Their charm comes from the feeling that the machine can keep learning new tricks as life changes. Visitors arriving for the 2026 World Cup may have expected American cars to behave like loud symbols of excess. What they encountered was a culture of practical imagination, where one vehicle could look polished outside a stadium on Friday, carry lumber on Saturday, and head toward a lake before sunrise on Sunday without suffering an identity crisis. That flexibility becomes difficult to forget after living with it for several weeks. A standard car begins to feel oddly final, like buying a house where every shelf has been permanently glued in place. America offers something warmer and more playful. The vehicle is yours, the road remains open, and its next version can begin with one Saturday morning and a trip to the parts store. Around here, ownership means accepting the factory starting point, then happily writing the rest of the answer yourself. Perhaps the biggest surprise was never the size of America's cars, but the size of the life they make possible. Behind every wide cabin, long highway, and well-used pickup sits a culture built around movement, usefulness, and the freedom to say yes to one more journey. Would you trade a smaller car for that kind of everyday possibility? Share your answer below and subscribe to the channel for more honest encounters with the America visitors never expected to deeply love.